Hello, everybody. My name is Amaya Perez. I am the online programming director of Recovering from Religion, and I am also your social host, not your social host, sorry, your host today. And I am here with Madeline, who is usually the RfRx social host, but today she is also going to co-host the actual session with me because usually Eric does it, but he's on holiday, so she's going to do it instead. So hello again, Madeline, and thank you so much for being here.
Hello, hello, no problem.
Cool. So the first thing I'm going to do is launch the poll. So bear with me because, again, usually Eric does this, but should be easy enough. Okay, so can everyone see the poll now? Yes, okay, cool. So the first question is, have you heard of the acronym MLM before? And the options are, I've heard of it, I haven't heard of it, and I've heard of it, but I'm not sure what it stands for. Then the second question is, have you been involved in an MLM? And the options are yes, no, I was pitched an MLM opportunity, but didn't join. Then the third question is, if you were in an MLM, did you make any money? And the options are yes, no, not applicable. And the fourth question is, do you know any family or friends who have been in an MLM? And the options are yes, no, and I don't know. All right, so yeah, we have to make a shout out first. So Madeline, why don't you go ahead and do that?
Thank you. Yes, it's a shout out to the atheist community of Austin. This video is being streamed over their Discord channel. It's an awesome community to get to meet and virtually hang out with. We encourage that you reach out to them. The link to that ACA Discord link will be posted in the chat box. And Amaya, we can just jump right in. Can you tell us about RfRx?
Yeah, sure. So RfRx, for those of you who haven't been here before, is basically a series of online weekly sessions in which we bring in guests to discuss different topics that may be relevant to anyone who is involved in RfR or anyone who has left religion or is in the process of leaving religion. This is in no way a replacement for the support groups or the online community. It's more of a complement to these services, and it's also a good way of providing advice and coping skills to anyone who may need them right now. If you have any sort of questions, any feedback, any comments, just anything you want us to know, you can do so by sending us an email to rfrx@recoveringfromreligion.org. And if you want to watch any of our previous RfRx sessions, you can find them in our YouTube channel, and that is youtube.com/recoveringfromreligion. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, every single link that we mentioned will be in the description box down below. And obviously, if you're watching it live, we will post all the links in the description chat. Not in the description chat, in the actual chat. Anyway, okay, and now let's jump to speak what it is that we do in Recovering from Religion in general as an organization. So in Recovering from Religion, we have a mission statement, and that is that we offer hope, healing, and support to those who are struggling with issues of religion and non-belief. So first of all, just to explain hope a little bit, we offer hope by sharing our stories. So it's basically the idea that if I have gone through a bad experience and you have also gone through the same bad experience, if I share my experience, you will feel better because there is hope of being able to get out of that bad experience. And the two platforms that we have in order to send hope is our podcast. And again, links will be in the chat. And also our blog, where people can share their personal stories and you can read them and hopefully be inspired by them. And now I have been speaking for a while, so Madeline, please, do you want to talk about the healing parts of RfR?
Yes, of course. The healing part comes in the form of the helpline. It's a tool that can be reached 24/7, either via online chat or phone call. These are a group of helpline agents that will listen with an empathetic ear. There'll be no judgment or criticism. And we also offer healing in the form of resources, which are available on our website's resource pages. Again, that'll be on the chat box. Also, I'll jump in and discuss support. And that's in the form of the peer support groups, traditionally face-to-face in-person meetings and now held virtually due to COVID, as we all know. There are roughly 55 groups around the world, and we're always looking to form even more and have more flexibility now with the virtual world that we're living in. You can find the nearest group to you in our RfR website. And as we said before, that link in the chat box. Amaya, did you want to touch on the second
Yeah.
therapy part?
Yeah, sorry, I think my internet is going a bit weird, but yeah, I'm just gonna jump right to it. So we also offer something called the Secular Therapy Project. And this is basically a program that helps you find a mental health professional who is not going to just, in the middle of a session, tell you to pray harder, or that you just need Jesus, or that you need to read the Bible, or whatever, like that, something like that. So we basically screen all of the therapists in order to be in this Secular Therapy Project. And the criteria that we use is that they use, first of all, that they have the appropriate licensing, obviously, of their state. Also, that they use secular methods, so they are not going to proselytize. And then the last one is that they use exclusively evidence-based treatments. So they're not going to sell you any homeopathy, and hopefully they won't be a part of an MLM or anything similar. So if you feel like you need a therapist, but you don't want to spend the ridiculous amount of time and money that you would need to spend usually if you were just kind of wandering on the internet to find a secular therapist, you can use our resource, and hopefully that will help you. And what else? So we also have the online community, and an online community is basically a place where you can chat and meet with people who share similar backgrounds as you. We have all sorts of different groups. We have people who have been in the military, we have a group for females only, we have an Australian group, we have an LGBTQ plus group, we have groups for specific religions. So really we do have a group for anyone. So if you feel like this is something that you could benefit from, all you have to do is just contact one of our helpline agents, either via telephone call or online chat, and then they will let you know what it is that you need to do to join one of these groups. And just to mention, apart from the chats, they also hold Sunday night Zoom meetings. So again, if you feel like this could help you, please do contact one of our helpline agents, because I feel like it's helping so many people. So yeah, go ahead and contact them. And then before we actually speak about the meeting today, I'm just going to have a mini advert of volunteering, because volunteering has been such an amazing experience for me. I love being a volunteer, and I feel like other volunteers in RfR also feel the same way. We have created an amazing community. We are always trying to help each other, and we are always looking for volunteers, obviously. So if you would like to volunteer, all you have to do is go to our volunteering page. And we have all sorts of different roles. So whatever your skills are, I'm sure we will find a place for you. So if you feel like you have more time, if you feel like you just want to help other people, please do visit our volunteering page, because RfR does like a beautiful work at helping people who are struggling to leave religion. So yeah, I just wanted to encourage you all to join us in the volunteering team. And again, I feel like my throat is getting sore, so Madeline, why don't you explain the meeting format, please?
Sure, it's a short break, but I'll talk about the meeting format. It'll go about an hour for the discussion with our guest, and then we'll have 20 to 30 minutes of Q&A. We do ask that you type your questions into the chat wherever you're watching this video, and we'll go ahead and take note of that. And at the end of the call, of the discussion, during the Q&A, we'll address your questions. And then after that, there'll be the hangout where it's more relaxed. The recording won't be on anymore, and it'll be a loose conversation where you can unmute yourself and ask any questions you may have at that point. And that's it for the setup of the meeting. Amaya, you want to kick us off again?
Yes, so I have the great pleasure of finally introducing our speaker today. So I'm just going to unmute you, just a sec. Again, bear with me. My first time dealing with Zoom. It's usually Eric who does it, and I can't find you in the participant list. Okay, there you are. Oh no, you actually unmuted yourself. Oh, perfect. You did the job for me. Thank you. That's amazing.
It came up with an option that said unmute, so I just clicked it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Taylor. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm so grateful that you're here. And I feel like the topic of today is something that is not necessarily linked to religion, as we have said before, but it is very relevant because a lot of ex-religious people deal with it. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really excited about this.
Cool. So before we start, I'm just gonna let you know a bit about Taylor. So Taylor is passionate about educating the public about the dangers of the predatory nature of MLMs. She actually has a YouTube channel built for this purpose, and the YouTube channel is called the Antibot. We have discussed pronunciation before. This is probably not how you say it, but I have forgotten how to say the way you said it. So just bear with me. So yeah, here she debunks videos made by MLMs in which they maybe are advertising an MLM, or you have also made videos of like the structure of MLMs and how they profit from the vulnerability of people. They do often prey on ex-religious people and also on religious people. So Taylor is basically doing all the work in trying to spread the word of get away from an MLMs. They will steal your money. They don't actually love you. They just want your money. And then also Taylor wants to build a world where women are truly empowered by owning small businesses who are legitimate and stop the cash flow of these multi-billion-dollar companies. So yeah, that is Taylor. And I guess the first question would be, what is an MLM? What does it stand for? How is it structured? What is it?
So it seems like most people here have heard of MLM before, because 91% said they've heard of it, but I'll just go ahead and explain a little bit of what it is and what it stands for. So MLM stands for multi-level marketing. Sometimes it's also called network marketing or direct sales. An important thing to remember is that direct sales is actually a legitimate sales model, unlike network marketing and multi-level marketing. But the MLM industry has kind of co-opted this term, and they've used it to kind of describe what they're doing because they want to sound more legitimate. But MLMs, unlike traditional businesses that hire salespeople that are either salaried or they have a salary plus commissions, MLMs actually use non-salaried workers to sell their products. These workers are usually called distributors. Sometimes they're called independent business owners or coaches. And MLM companies, there's hundreds of MLM companies out there, and they sell a lot of different things. So there's MLMs that sell clothing, jewelry, there's a lot of health and wellness MLMs that sell things like supplements and essential oils. Yeah, so there's just tons of different things that they sell, but not only do they sell these products, but they also sell this business opportunity to the general public. So you can buy products from MLMs, but then you can also sign up for their business opportunity and become part of their company. And you purchase products from the company and then resell those to outside customers. And you make a percentage off of any of the products or services that you sell to other people. And what makes it multi-level is that not only can you make money from selling products, but you can actually recruit people into the business under you, and that's referred to as your downline. And you make a percentage off of anything that they sell, as well as anything that you sell. And then anyone you recruit in can also recruit people under them, and so on and so forth, until this giant pyramid-like structure forms. That's why a lot of the time MLMs are referred to as pyramid schemes. They're basically pyramid schemes, although we'll get into more of the legality on that later. And another important thing is that MLMs usually don't differentiate between sales made to outside customers and purchases that are just made by the distributors. So a lot of MLM companies, they will really encourage their distributors to buy up a lot of product, and they'll tell them it's so that they can later resell that. But a lot of the time they don't, and so they just build up all this product. I've heard stories of distributors having an entire room in their house dedicated just to product, or they'll have a shed that's is full of product. So yeah, and they don't differentiate between that. So it's hard to tell how much product is being actually sold to people who want to buy it, and versus how much product is actually just used by the distributors themselves. But it turns out that it's mostly just from the distributors themselves, and that leads MLMs to being recruitment driven rather than sales driven. And an important thing is the Federal Trade Commission for the United States. They actually define something to be an illegal pyramid scheme if it's recruitment-driven rather than sales-driven. So under that definition, many MLMs can be defined as illegal pyramid schemes. But of course, we've seen in the US that there's tons of MLMs, right? And it doesn't seem like really anything's been done about them. We'll see time every so often, the FTC will crack down on one of the smaller MLMs and call them a pyramid scheme. But a lot of the big ones like Amway, Young Living, doTERRA, they're still alive and doing well. And that has a lot to do with the fact that the MLM industry actually has a lobbyist group that represents them. It's called the Direct Selling Association. And this lobbyist group is very large and has a lot of money behind it. And they've actually successfully lobbied out a lot of the regulations that would have protected consumers from MLMs. So just as an example, a few years ago, there was going to be a legislation that was going to be put into place that would have required MLMs to come out with income disclosures. So the income disclosures show how much people are making and how much people are losing in the company. And this legislation would have actually required that MLMs produce this. Now, a lot of MLMs do produce this, but it's not because it's required by law, but it's because just public pressure, they feel like they have to. But the DSA successfully knocked down this legislation, and that's not a requirement for MLMs. Another thing they did was there was a piece of legislation that would have required the Department of Defense to create this training program for military members and their spouses to learn about the risks associated with MLMs, which would have been really important because MLMs prey on military spouses a lot because military wives tend to not be able to have a job because they're constantly moving around with their husband. So this would have, it seems very enticing for military wives because it seems like a business that they can do from their home. So there would have been a training program that would have taught military members and their spouses about the risks associated with MLMs, but unfortunately, the DSA knocked that down. And so it's kind of interesting that we're actually talking about this tonight, considering that the US elections are tomorrow, because there is a lot of influence that MLMs have over our politicians, especially those in the Republican, especially those that are Republican. Just as an example, Donald Trump, who is our current president, and I hope not our future president, but he is our current president. He was actually involved with 2 MLMs. So he was involved with a supplements company it was originally called Ideal Health. And then when he took it over and gave his branding to it, they renamed it the Trump Network, and they sold supplements. And then he was also involved with a company called ACN, and he did a lot of speeches for this company. And he just did a lot of promotion stuff for them. He actually promoted them on The Apprentice several times. So he's had a lot of involvement with MLMs. And then Amway, which is the largest MLM company in the world, they have given tons to the Republican Party. In 1994, they actually contributed $2.5 million to the Republican National Committee, and that was the largest corporate contribution at that time. And they also sponsored House Representative Sue Myrick back in the 90s. They constituted over half of her campaign funds. And then also Betsy DeVos, who we know is our Secretary of Education, her family actually made all of their money in MLMs. Her husband was the CEO of Amway, and his father actually founded Amway. So yeah, MLMs are very, very prevalent, and they have a lot of involvement in our government, and that's why we still see them around today.
That's incredible.
That is crazy. I mean, I had no idea that politics were so involved, especially when you said Donald Trump. I mean, I feel like I'm surprised, but not. But because, I don't know, he's just so, I don't want to comment on that man because he's just No, it wouldn't be nice things coming from me, but that is crazy. I didn't know that politics were so involved in the management of MLMs. I guess that it makes sense in a way that they're giving so much money so they can still be in power and pass through all of these legislation.
And the lack of regulations also. So Taylor, is there a way to know like how much between all of them is being produced since they don't have to disclose that information?
Can you ask that question again? I'm sorry.
Do we know like how much they actually make in the MLMs, since they don't have to disclose those statements? Is that information that can be obtained, or like a ballpark or anything like that?
Yeah, so most of the large MLM companies, they do come out with income disclosures just because of all the pressure that they face from the public. Like I said, it's not a regulation that they do that. When we look at their income disclosures, like you can just Google, like, for example, Young Living income disclosure, and you should be able to find their 2019 income disclosure statement. And I think for them, it was over 90%, I think, of those in their company made $0 in the year of 2019. But that number is probably not accurate. There was a really comprehensive study that was conducted back in 2011 by this guy named John M. Taylor. He looked at over 350 different MLMs and looked at them for over a period of 15 years. And he analyzed their income disclosures and how their company operated. And he actually found that over 99.6% of everyone involved in MLM either doesn't make any money or actually loses money. And you can find this information if you just Google like FTC MLM, it should come up and you should be able to find this study. But yeah, almost 100% of people aren't making money.
That's nuts. And can you share what your personal interest, what your story with MLMs is, how you're so passionate about it?
Yeah. So as you can see, I'm very anti-MLM. I'm very passionate about sharing the dangers of this. So my story actually starts a while back. I think it was 6 or 7 years ago now. Drew and I, Drew's my husband, we had a very close family member get involved with Young Living. And Young Living is an MLM that sells essential oils. They've been around for, I think, over 20 years. And their whole shtick is that they believe, or not, well, a lot of them do believe, but they claim that essential oils can be used medicinally, that instead of using modern medicine, everyone should just be able to cure themselves by using these oils. That's something that the company now doesn't necessarily say, but most of the people, like the founder, for example, really believe this. Most of the people that work for Young Living believe this, and all their distributors believe it, but they're not allowed to make any medical claims anymore because a few years ago, the FDA sent them a warning letter about that. But it's important to know that a lot of them do think that essential oils can be used medicinally. But anyways, yeah, so we had a family member who got involved with this company, and they wanted Drew and I to get involved, and they wanted to put us in their downline. So at first, Drew and I were not like, I had never heard of MLMs before. I had no idea what multi-level marketing was. I had never heard of Young Living. I didn't really know anything about essential oils. So when they said that they wanted to put us in their downline and they wanted us to be able to have a Young Living business too, I didn't really think that much of it. And they told us that if we joined Young Living, that eventually we'd be making enough money from the business to be able to pay off our student loans, which was something that was really, really important to Drew and I at the time, because we were about to graduate from college. So at first we didn't really think much of it. Initially, how they presented it to us is that once Drew and I graduated college, we would take over our business and then run it. But up until that time, they would run the business for us so that we could focus on college. And so we were pretty much on board with this. And while we were in college, we didn't really think that much of it. But after a couple years, the claims that our family members started making about the oils started to get really, really weird and bizarre. At first, they were pretty much just claiming things like, oh, if you put peppermint oil on your head, if you have a headache, that will help. Or if you put some like grapefruit oil into your water, it'll help you like maintain weight. It was just kind of things that aren't claims that aren't necessarily good, but there wasn't anything that was that dangerous about them. But then they started saying things like essential oils could cure diabetes, that essential oils could cure things like cancer. At one point they had, I can't remember if it was a family member or a close friend of theirs that was in the hospital with a brain tumor. And they actually went to the hospital and put a bunch of frankincense oil on their head because they believed that that would get rid of their brain tumor. So they just really started to believe that oils could cure anything. They also started claiming that oils were purposely left here on the earth by God because he gave us these tools for us to be able to heal our own bodies. And they started interweaving their Christian faith into the business, which was kind of weird. They said things like the US government is actively suppressing information about the medical uses of essential oils, especially for cancer, because they want to keep making money from modern cancer treatments. And they thoroughly believed that they were one day going to be a millionaire from just working their MLM business, and that eventually Young Living was going to be sending them a check in the mail for $1 million. So the claims just started getting more and more bizarre. And one day I kind of sat down with Drew and I was like, you know what, this is starting to get a little strange. I think that we should look into Young Living on our own, research into multi-level marketing, and see what's really, really going on here. So when I researched into it, I found a lot of very shocking things. So I found the John M. Taylor study that shows most people in MLMs don't make any money. I also found information about the founder of Young Living. His name's Gary Young. I found that he had actually been arrested several times for operating a medical practice without a doctor's license. And because of that, he actually moved his clinic to Tijuana, Mexico, where the regulations weren't as stringent as the US. I found that like all of the claims surrounding Young Living and their oils, that none of that was substantiated by any sort of scientific evidence.
Sorry, just to ask a very stupid question, how do you make an essential oil? And I know this is like really silly, but since homeopathy is like, I think 1 bit of, I don't know, whatever, and then 10 of water, like a mixture of those things, I'm not sure if essential oils are kind of the same, or how do you make one? I don't know, it's confusing.
So from my understanding, the essential oils are like oil that's inside of a plant. So there's some sort of way to extract oil from it and then distill it in some sort of method. So it's like basically the super concentrated essence of a plant. I think that's all I know of how they do that.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's all right. I was just a bit confused because everyone who likes essential oils, I feel like they talk about it like it's magic and they can solve any issues, as you said, cancer, or whatever it may be.
Can I interject here? So homeopathy is different because homeopathy is actually magic. It's actually diluting a substance to there is nothing left of it and then claiming it's the most efficient at that dose. So yeah, that's not the same as essential oils.
Yeah, essential oils are like super, super concentrated, and then homeopathy, they like dilute things in water till like it doesn't exist, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. But yeah, all of this stuff was getting really weird. So Drew and I decided, hey, this is not looking good. And we decided not to join Young Living. And that's kind of when we started both getting very passionate about talking MLMs. And also, interestingly, our experience with MLMs kind of started both of us on our road to deconstructing from Christianity, because a lot of the claims that MLMs like to use are very, very similar to the claims used in Christianity. And we saw how important it was to derive truth from scientific evidence rather than just from unvalidated claims. So yeah, luckily we decided not to join.
Oh, that's great. And I want to say you touched on how MLMs target like stay-at-home moms, etc. You said also just now that it kind of tipped you over into not believing, but does that also mean that they would target religious people because of that similar framework that they have?
Yeah, so MLMs disproportionately target religious people. And part of that is because a lot of MLMs are have been founded or are run by either Christians or by Mormons. Actually, the majority of MLM companies are headquartered in Utah, which is the center for Mormonism. So yeah, they really target religious people, and a lot of that is because there's similar claims that are being made in both. So MLMs really, they promote their opportunity as like this life-changing thing. Like you're going to be able to change your life, and it's like this dream opportunity, and it's almost a salvation narrative, which is really similar to Christianity. And they also kind of sell it as if you decide not to join an MLM, then your life is going to be horrible. You're never going to make any money. You're going to just be living and destitute and working a 9-to-5 job, which to MLMs apparently is like the worst thing ever. So that's really similar to the narratives that Christianity likes to sell with if you leave Christianity, your life is just going to turn horrible, and God's going to turn his back from you. So there's a lot of similarities there.
Yeah, a couple of years ago when I left uni, I remember an MLM approached me, although I didn't know that it was an MLM at that time. And it was basically the business, it was like a business pitch kind of thing in which I had to pay 50 something quid to get like her products or something. And in my head, I was like, there's no way I should be asked to pay to be able to do a job. Like that makes no sense. But obviously it's like, they're so like strategic in preying on people who are vulnerable, as you said, like as religious people who just left uni, people who maybe just moved into a new city and they don't have any friends or they don't have a community. So yeah, I feel like they do it in purpose so much.
Yeah,
it's just
immigrants
so
too, I bet.
Yeah.
And can you tell us though, Taylor, how can we avoid an MLM? Are there any tips you can give us so that we don't fall prey to this?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that people can look out for. So usually people hear about MLMs through their friends and family, because when someone joins an MLM, they're immediately told to start recruiting people in. And who do they recruit? They recruit their people that are closest to them. They recruit their friends and their family. So I'm sure the majority of people here have probably been messaged on social media by a long lost friend or by a family member asking them to join their business opportunity. So if you get any sort of messages about something like that, so something that's where they use the terms business opportunity, or they say something like, I have an exciting opportunity for you, that should be a red flag, because that's probably an MLM. Also, if they can't describe to you what exactly it is that you'll be doing in the company, if they just say, oh, I think you would be really good at running the business that I run, but then when you ask them, what is the business, or what is it exactly that I would be doing, or what is it that I would be selling, if they're super vague about that, that should be a red flag as well, because a lot of MLMs actually tell their reps to not tell people what the name of the company is, because MLMs get such a bad rap. So they try to kind of like keep that a secret. Yeah, so any of those red flags, a lot of the time too, MLMs will post like a job listing to websites, and it can appear super legitimate, but if you click on that job listing and then all the information seems really vague, so if they can't tell you exactly how much your salary is going to be, and if they're vague about what the company is or the job you're going to be doing, that's probably an MLM. So yeah, any of those red flags.
Yeah, those are great tips. I was approached years ago by a coworker just randomly about an exciting opportunity. And, I also didn't know what an MLM was at the time, but it just didn't make a lot of sense. And it was just kind of an awkward, no, I'm not really interested. And he just kept reaching out, like making cold calls. It's just very uncomfortable. So
It sounds like a cult.
It does. What could we do though if someone that we know is already involved in an MLM? Is there anything that we can do or something that we shouldn't say to them?
Yeah. So first off, going off of something that you mentioned, because you mentioned how they kept on reaching out to you. That's something that's very typical in an MLM. They are taught to not take no for an answer. So even if you're approached by a friend and you tell them no, they'll most likely in a couple weeks message you about it again. That's just kind of what they do. So if this is specifically for if you have a friend or a family member involved with an MLM, an important thing is to just be there for them, because MLMs like to isolate their members from anyone who might be critical of the business model, because they don't want their members hearing any dissenting information. So more likely than not, if you have a friend or family member involved, they might just start distancing themselves from you because their MLM told them to. But you want to make sure that you are not cutting off that relationship with them, because you might be the only voice of reason. You might be the only one who is going to help them out of the MLM. So yeah, just making sure that you're there for them. Also ask them a lot of questions about why they're joining, because a lot of the time people have because MLMs like to prey on people that are vulnerable, and they'll use kind of your emotions against you and use things that are really important to you against you. And so a lot of the time people will join MLMs because they're in a desperate situation, or they really need money or something like that. So figuring out why they joined initially can be helpful, because then you can help them figure out how they can meet that need without being involved with the MLM. So if they're needing extra cash, maybe you can work with them to figure out a way they can do like an actual legitimate side job instead of the MLM to get that extra cash. And then also the final thing would be ask them to keep a spreadsheet of their income versus expenses, because a lot of people actually don't keep track of how much they're spending for the MLM, how much product they're buying, how much training materials they're buying. And so even if they're getting a small check from the MLM, they may not realize that they had all these expenses that they didn't account for, and overall they're actually losing money. So encouraging them to keep track of the money they're spending versus how much they're actually making can be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. And what about for those who maybe joined to make money, but now they're staying because of the community? Because I've seen a few videos, and obviously you can correct me if I'm wrong, but where they kind of meet in these massive events, and it does feel like they're there for the community, and it does feel like they feel like they're part of a family, and all of these emotional kind of ties to the group, rather than just I'm just making my business. It's actually something more emotional than that. So any advice on how to help someone who maybe is in that like emotional dependability almost? Yeah,
so that's another thing, is that MLMs, because they try to isolate you from anyone that doesn't agree, they kind of make it so that your entire community and your friend group is all of the people that are in the MLM with you. And so you feel like you have this sense of community. But the problem is if you ever express any doubts about the MLM, those people will turn against you very, very quickly, and they will discourage you from doubting. And if you ever decide to leave the MLM, those people more likely than not will probably not remain friends with you. And this isn't always the case. I know of people who are still friends with people that they were friends with in an MLM, but it is very, very typical for those friendships to be very much predicated on being in the MLM. So if you know someone who realizes that they're not making money, but they want to stay in it for the community aspect, I would just remind them of, or I would just ask them if they feel like these people would still be friends with them if they weren't involved, and how much this, how ask them if they've like left friends or family that they used to be friends with prior, and tell them that they can possibly reconnect with these old people instead of just being friends with people in the MLM.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like what you're saying is reminding me a lot of a talk we had about Jehovah's Witnesses, where if you leave the Jehovah's Witnesses, like they shun you and they don't like, they stop talking to you and they stop like communicating with you all together. So I feel like it really does sound like a religion. Like apart from the joke, it does sound like it's structured like a religion is structured almost, which is very creepy. So just to get an idea, how many people are affected by MLMs? Like how many people join them? Because we all have maybe that like family member or friend that is in an MLM, but sometimes it's difficult to count how many people there are because obviously they're not very transparent, are they? So
yeah. There was actually a study that was conducted by the AARP Foundation, and they found that 1 in 7 people in the United States have been involved with a multi-level marketing company. So a large majority of people have been involved.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
I feel like that's a lot more than I expected.
Yeah, and I think part of that, why it's such a large number of people, is that people get involved with things like this for a couple months and then they end up quitting. So yeah, just there's a lot of turnover in this. So it ends up being a lot of people involved.
Mm-hmm. And is there any way in which they target specifically religious people or ex-religious people? Because I've heard that obviously, well, I mean, you said before that because they tie to the Bible and kind of that kind of stuff. Is there, if there's anyone who is religious who is listening to us, is there anything that they should be aware of more so than maybe another demographic group?
I think that they should just be aware of the fact that the MLM is using their faith against them. So a lot of the times when an MLMer is trying to, if an MLMer is a person of faith, they'll try to recruit other people in by saying things like, this is God's plan for your life, or this is how you can better your relationship with Christ is by owning this business and helping other people change their lives through this business. So they'll say a lot of things like that. So just be aware of the fact that this isn't them genuinely caring about you, or in the end, this is about getting you to join so that they can make money off of you. This isn't about them really just caring so much about you and wanting like you to sorry, now I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, this isn't about them actually caring about you or caring about your faith.
Yeah, because I mean, as you said before, was it 99% of people don't make any money in MLM? So obviously the chances are against you. So imagine that you are watching this and then you discover, oh God, I am in an MLM. What should they do? You know, they just have this realization, because I'm not sure if leaving is just as easy as saying, okay, bye, I don't want to be a part of it anymore. If there's any tips that you can give them, yeah, anything that people could find helpful.
I would say there's never really a good time to leave an MLM. Because you're going to get backlash from the other people that are in the MLM with you. There's going to be backlash. So now is as good a time as any to get out if you feel like that's something that you want to do. I don't ever want to force people to leave, because ultimately that needs to be their own decision. But moving forward, just examine more closely whether or not you're actually making money doing this, if this is something that's worth your time, because MLMs like to say that you can work this business part-time and make supplemental income, but a lot of the time that's not true. So just examine if the amount of time you're putting into this, if it's actually worth it. And if you're not wanting to leave right now, maybe put a cutoff date in the future of when you could leave, and hold yourself accountable to that. So if in 3 months you're still not making any money, then that's the time you decide to leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great tip, to be honest, because I feel like it gives you perspective of, I've spent this much money, I've spent X amount of time in this place, let's just leave by this date. So yeah, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And then is there any way in which an MLM, as far as you know of, can do actual legitimate ethical business, or is that a mythological creature?
I would say that's a mythological creature.
Okay.
Because of the way that MLM is structured, there's not really any way that it can be ethical, because the only way to make money in an MLM is by recruiting people into the company. And statistically speaking, those people aren't going to make any money, because like we said, 99.6% of people don't make any money. So if someone in an MLM is successful, it's only because they have hundreds, possibly thousands of people under them that aren't successful. So the way that an MLM is structured, in my opinion, there's no way to do that ethically.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. And in the very, very unlikely case scenario in which you have a friend or family member which is making a lot of money because maybe they are in the top bits of the MLM, again, very, very unlikely, would you recommend talking them out of the MLMs, or do you feel like it's just better to leave them in?
So that's kind of a tricky question. Because I don't think that like talking someone out of an MLM or talking someone out of a cult. And another thing I should mention is that MLMs get called cults a lot, and cult psychologists actually define MLMs as commercial cults because they use a lot of cult tactics. So I think that talking someone out of a high demand group like an MLM usually doesn't work. And especially with someone who is at the top and is actually making money in this business, it's kind of hard to persuade them out of it. So I would just kind of go back to the recommendations that I gave before for anyone that's in an MLM. Just be there for them and ask them questions about it and get to why they're trying to do it, or ask them questions that might make them think about what they're doing, or like questions like, oh, how many people have you recruited under you? So that they can kind of start thinking about the fact that they have hundreds of people under them that aren't making any money. And yeah, just questions like that are good. But yeah, talking someone out of it is kind of a difficult thing.
Yeah, especially if they're making a lot of money, I guess.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're not going to be like, oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me give up all my money and my source of income. Like, obviously, that's not going to happen. So yeah, that's fair enough. And is there any other way of calling an MLM without calling it that? So, for example, if, I don't know, like an organization, I don't know, it hasn't been classified as an MLM, but works essentially like an MLM. Is there a word for that? Is there like another acronym that people use? Maybe there isn't, and it's just like universally MLM, but just in case.
So I'm not sure if there would be another acronym for it. Some companies don't like to say that they're MLMs just because MLMs have such a bad reputation. But people also refer to it as network marketing or direct sales. So if you encounter someone that's using either of those terms, or if a company or organization that you're in is using those terms, it's most likely that they're an MLM.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough, yeah. And then someone in the comments, it wasn't a direct question, which is what I'm gonna ask you here instead of the Q&A, but they were curious about the quote unquote dark side of MLMs in sense of like the political ties and the kind of who is behind it. And I know you touched on this at the beginning with Trump and other Republicans. Mm-hmm. Is there any other people that we should be aware of that you know of political parties, or I don't know, anyone who is in power really? It could also be celebrities, to be honest, who are involved in MLMs.
Yeah, so the ones that I mentioned, those are kind of the main ones. I think the people that we really need to be wary of are the politicians that have connections to the MLM industry, people like Donald Trump or people like Betsy DeVos, because they're going to have a vested interest in keeping MLMs unregulated. So I think that's where a lot of, I guess, the dark side can be found, because politicians, they are the people that are making the regulations for us. They're the people that are making the laws. So if we have politicians that have been persuaded by MLMs to go lenient on MLMs, then we're not going to see any change, or there's not going to be, there's not going to be any made to the regulations surrounding MLMs. So that's kind of where I see more of the dark side. There have been a lot of celebrities that have started MLMs. I think the ones that I know of off the top of my head are Tyra Banks and Black China. I know they both have started MLM companies, and a lot of celebrities are paid by MLM companies to endorse their products. So that's kind of a dangerous area too.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of celebrities endorsing, not MLMs specifically, but like teas that basically make you just shit more and stuff like that, that is not like based on any scientific evidence. And it's so dangerous because they have so much power over obviously their audience. So it can be so devastating. I feel like if someone that I admire could be like, oh, buy this thing, I wouldn't even think, they're probably lying to me, or this is not based on real stuff. So yeah,
I think horrible. That's definitely something that happens, is we see these really well-known people that we look up to, and they're endorsing these products. So we don't think that there's anything questionable about it, but the reality is they're being paid by these companies to do that.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So how is it possible that MLMs are still legal? And I know you said that they have this, I don't remember the name, but this kind of like organization that kind of takes care of it, but isn't the law supposed to be, and maybe I'm being naive here, but isn't the law supposed to be above that? How come this is like a thing? Because they're basically a pyramid scheme, which is illegal, but they operate, I don't know, it's just strange. How is that possible?
So kind of like the things that I've already mentioned, just how much influence they have over our politics is really the main reason that MLMs are still around, because we have the organization, Direct Selling Association, pouring lots of money into this to making sure that the MLM industry is unregulated. But then also MLMs, when they're defining sales, they kind of obscure those numbers so that it can appear as though they're selling a lot of product to actual outside customers, but that's actually most likely product that's staying within the organization itself, and it's just product that's being bought up by distributors and not actually sold to real customers. So I think that they hide those real sales numbers, and so it can appear as though this is a legitimate company and there's sales being made, but in reality that's not happening, and in reality it's all about recruiting. So MLMs go really out of their way to influence our politics and to also hide what they're truly about.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
that
you.
Makes perfect sense. Is there anything, Madeline, that you want to ask Taylor? Because I feel like I can't think of any more questions for now, but
yes, it's a question. It was in the chat, or it's a question that's come up. Do you worry, Taylor, about being sued by any of these companies by being so aggressive in your anti-MLM?
That is something that I do worry about, for sure. I think because I'm still kind of a small voice in the anti-MLM community, kind of a relatively small voice, I don't worry about that right now. But in the future, if I gain more of a following and MLM companies notice me talking bad about them, that is something to be concerned about. But at the end of the day, I'm more concerned with educating the public about these dangers. So even if these companies are going to come after me, I'm going to still doing what I'm doing because I think what I'm doing is the truth. And I think it's on the MLM companies to show that they're actually legitimate. That's not up to me. So it's something I'm worried about, but it's not changing my opinion or going to change what I'm going to do in the future.
That's admirable. And thank you really so much for being here and for sharing all this information. Where can we find you online?
Yeah, so my channel's the Antibot. So if you just search the Antibot, you'll find my channel there. I'm also on Twitter at the Antibot.
Great. So that's YouTube and Twitter. Awesome. Was there anything that we didn't ask you or anything else you wanted to add?
I think that I'll just add, just because we've been talking so much about MLMs and religious people, I do want to make it a point that ex-religious people can also be targeted too by MLMs, because MLMs like to advertise that they're a community and that you can join this business and make all these friends and have all these people supporting you. And as we know, for the case for a lot of people that are leaving religion, they oftentimes find themselves without community because they're leaving their church community they had before, or they're ostracized by their friends and family. So MLMs can pick up on that, and they may target people that are deconverting because they're looking for community. So that's just something to look out for ex-religious people.
Mm-hmm. I mean, checking the poll that we shared before, to the question is, have you ever been involved in an MLM? 27% said yes, which looks like it's not a lot, but it is a lot because, I mean, 27% it is a big number. And
Yeah.
out of, on the next question of, if you were in an MLM, did you make any money? The same percent said no. So clearly, like probably, and obviously there could be a mistake here, but chances are nobody who is listening to us and voted in a poll made any money. So they can definitely target ex-religious people, obviously preying their vulnerability. And we also had another talk in RfR about how to avoid getting into other cult-like organizations, not exclusively MLMs, but right after you leave religion, obviously you may not be in the best position. So I feel like it kind of ties really well with that, because they make so much money, they prey so much on vulnerable people, and it's so like not talked about enough. I feel like it's just something that everyone is like, oh yeah, that weird friend that is like selling essential oils, when it's like a really, really bad thing. And I was also really surprised about how many different things they can sell. So Dr. Ray, before the session, he was telling us that they were selling knives in one of the MLMs. So it's not just exclusively, essential oils or hair products. They can sell like literally anything, which is just really scary.
Yeah, it can be literally anything. If a product exists, it's likely that an MLM exists.
Yeah. And just to close with the last question of the poll, 82% know someone who has been in an MLM. So again, just to reiterate the amount of people that are involved in an MLM, 82% is a lot of people. So yeah, just to share that with you all. So is there anything else you want to talk about before we jump to the Q&A?
No, I think we covered everything.
Perfect. Okay. Then I'm just going to go ahead and ask you the first question that we have from our audience. And is the church in any way, let me reread that again. Is the church a way in which they market? So not just, I guess this means not just like religious people, but like actually going to church and trying to sell the stuff there.
So I'm sure that there are churches that actually will set up booths for these MLMs to sell. I haven't seen that, but I'm sure that's something that exists. But just because there's so many Christians in MLMs, a lot of the time the word of mouth selling happens at church. So it could just be people after the service is over just talking, and they'll just mention their MLM company and ask their friend to get involved. So they're very much prevalent within the church community itself. So that's one place that people can find it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
And There's another question that's sort of a follow-up of your fear of being sued for your videos. Have you gotten any feedback, good or bad, as a result of your videos?
So far, it's been mostly positive, thankfully. I have had a couple of MLMers come over to my channel and kind of leave hate messages, but luckily that's been few and far between so far. I know that as I grow as a channel, that's probably gonna become a lot more, but thankfully it's not too bad.
That's great.
And is the church economically related to the MLM? So is there any secret influences that we should be aware of? Like in the same way you talked about celebrities and politicians, is any church kind of strongly involved with an MLM?
Not that I know of, although I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case, but I don't know of any specific church that is financially tied to an MLM.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's fine.
There's another question here. It's which strategies should we be aware of?
So which strategies, as in?
I guess if I'll add some meaning here. If someone is trying to recruit you into their downstream.
So kind of like the things that I had already discussed. So if they are using the terms business opportunity, that should be kind of a red flag for you. If they also try to all of a sudden get really, really close to you and foster a relationship with you kind of out of the blue, that can be a red flag. I don't want to say that's the case all the time, but a lot of the time MLMers will try to create a friendship with a potential prospect first because they feel like becoming friends is a better way to pitch them the opportunity. So yeah, either of those things are strategies that are used a lot.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And does capitalism depend in MLM in some way? I'm not sure if I understand fully the question, but it was submitted in the audience, so you can probably let us know.
So sorry, repeat the question.
So the question is, does capitalism depend on MLMs in some way? So I guess it comes from this idea that because MLMs are so big and they have such a massive cash flow, if you believe that just the whole capitalistic system kind of depends on MLMs, so in the sense that if they just disappear from one day to another, capitalism would be hurt by it, I guess.
Oh, okay, I understand the question now. Yeah, I think that can definitely be the case, especially for the state of Utah. The MLM industry is actually the second largest industry in Utah. So if the MLM industry were to all of a sudden disappear, that would obviously put Utah in some turmoil and the United States at large, probably. So there is that problem. Unfortunately, there's nothing that we can really do about that now because MLMs have existed for so long. Ideally, it would have been better to never build an economy based on multi-level marketing, based on such an unstable model. But yeah, there are cases where capitalism and the economy has been built on MLMs, which is dangerous and a hard thing to figure out what to do about.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that makes sense.
There's, if I may, there's another question on, have you ever watched on Becoming a God in Central Florida?
No, I've heard of that show. I have not watched that one yet, but it is something that I want to watch.
It's hopefully on Showtime, I understand.
It's on what?
On Showtime.
Okay.
Hopefully you'll be able to make a video of it after.
Yeah, so I just actually finished The Vow. And that's on HBO. It's about a multi-level marketing company called Nexium. I'm sure you guys have probably seen it a bit in the news, but this company was actually found to be a human trafficking ring. So I just finished The Vow, which is a whole documentary about that, which was super interesting.
Wow, that's like really, really dark. It's not even, it's not just like a bit illegal, it's like proper bad. That's just next level.
And it shows you that what these MLM companies can devolve to. Yeah.
I guess anything with that system can evolve into something really, really bad. So yeah, it weirdly makes sense. So we only have one last question. So if anyone has any questions to add, please do it in the next minutes, 2 minutes. So are Tupperware and Mary Kay MLMs?
Tupperware and Mary Kay are both MLMs. Yeah, they've been around for a long time. A lot of people don't actually realize that those two companies are MLMs, but they definitely are.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know. I mean, I knew that Mary Kay was, but I didn't know that Tupperware was, because I think my mom buys from Tupperware. I need to go ask her if she does.
I'm pretty sure that Tupperware actually sells in store too. I think that I'm pretty sure. I might need to double check that, but yeah, so it's you don't have to buy it through an MLM rep. You can just buy the product, but then they also do have reps for Tupperware.
Okay.
So supporting the business anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, so is there anything, oh wait, there's a last minute question. What are your thoughts on an MLM who offers direct sales and whose products you like and buy regularly? So yeah, so let's imagine that you happen to enjoy the products that the MLM buy. Do you think that they sell, do you think it is ethical to buy from them?
Personally, I don't think it's ethical. And that's because even though you're not involved with the MLM company, you are purchasing from a company that overwhelmingly oppresses people that are involved with it. And you're kind of supporting that model of taking advantage of people and financially ruining people and emotionally ruining people. So for me, I personally don't think it's ethical. I do know people who still buy the products, but for me, I don't think it's something that we should do.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And again, I feel like I'm saying this is the last question 50, 100,000 times, but there is another question. Is there a good... Sorry, Dr. Ray, yeah?
Yeah, I tried to put it up there, but I couldn't get it. And that's the notion of the sunk cost fallacy. I haven't heard her talk about sunk cost fallacy and how that keeps people in because they've got such a big investment. Can you talk a little bit about that, Taylor?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a thing that happens because people do invest so much money into building their MLM business, and they feel like they've spent so much money on product. They've invested so much of their time. They've built such a community around this that they feel like even though they're not making any money, they have to stay in the company because they've invested so much into it. So that's definitely something that happens for sure.
Well, and I'm gonna break out just next month or the next month or the next month or the next year. There's always that myth that I'm about to break into the big time.
Yeah, and that's something that MLMs tell their reps is that, oh, even though you're not making money right now, if you just work at it for another month, if you just put in that extra work for a little bit longer, eventually you're going to be making money. And they do that to keep people in, knowing that that will probably never happen for them. So yeah, that's something that definitely happens.
Mm-hmm. So if someone is doing a pitch of an MLM to you, is there any nice, friendly way in which you can kind of tell them that what they're doing is unethical and that they're probably not actually making any money and that they probably won't? Is there any tips that you can give if someone approach one of our audience members?
Yeah, I kind of take a different approach depending on who it is that's coming to me. So if I get a cold message from somebody that I've never met and I don't know, I usually feel that I can be a little bit more harsh with them. So I usually say MLMs are actually pretty unethical and the majority of people involved don't make any money. And so I'd prefer to not join your company. But if it's a friend or a family member, I suggest to people to take kind of a more softer approach with it. Yeah, so just saying hey, I appreciate that you think that this is something important, but I actually don't support MLMs. And if you want to talk further with me about that, I'm open to that. So taking more of a softer approach with friends or family, I suggest, because I feel like when people are just throwing a bunch of facts and figures at their family member or friend, usually that person shuts down pretty quickly and isn't open to hearing what you have to say. So I think a softer approach with them is better.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of being assertive, not waste their time, but also don't be an asshole, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's a good question to close the session with. I know there's a couple of more questions, but you guys will be able to ask Taylor, hopefully, if you stay for a little bit in the Hangout session. Which are you going to stay for a bit, or do you have to rush out?
Yeah, I think I'll probably be able to stay for like 15 or 20 minutes.
That's great. Thank you so much. Okay, so, well, thank you all so much for being here. Again, if you want to see any of our previous RfRx sessions, or this one obviously also included, you can watch all of them in our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, any feedback, any comments, any suggestions of who to bring, any topics that you want to see covered, please let us know, sending us an email to rfrx@recoveringfromreligion.org. And again, you can find our blog and our podcast in our website. I think Todd is going to link the links in the chat. And I am going to go ahead and launch the second poll, the goodbye poll, just to know a bit more about how you felt about this session and what are your opinions. So the questions are from 1 to 5. This program was relevant to me, so 1 is not at all relevant, 5 is very much relevant. Actually, let me just launch it first. Yeah, good idea. Second question is, the speaker was clear and understandable, again from 1 to 5. Third question is, I will definitely attend future programs like this, again from 1 to 5. And then the fourth question is, how do you find RfRx tonight? And the options are either via RfR online community or Slack, through a meetup event, through Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or another option. Okay, and now I am going to introduce you all to our amazing Executive Director, Gayle Jordan, who is going to have a bit of a RfR advert. So Gayle, thank you so much for being here again another week. And I feel like everyone here is just waiting for you to share this message. So go ahead. We all want to hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Amaya. What a delight to be here. Taylor, I learned so much tonight. I had no idea of the parallel or the connection between the religious community and MLMs, and it makes so much sense when you pointed out about the investment in the community and the stay-at-home mom piece of it, and even down to Daryl's sunken cost fallacy. You've invested and it parallels the religious experience so much. I'm surprised that I didn't know that, but it was an important piece of information, and I so appreciate. And it can't have been easy for you to have shared that. That was a difficult time for you. It sounds like it was a struggle for you all to work through it, and then the fracture of the community. And I appreciate you making it such a personal presentation, and I'm so grateful. You all know that this is we call this our RfR moment, and I have a wonderful business opportunity for everybody. If you contribute $100 and then you recruit 10 people down the line to be volunteers for our I'm kidding, because I'm a wise guy. You know that whenever I give you our RfR moment, I usually try to highlight something or another. You know that you're always welcome to join us as a volunteer. This is one big happy family. We are imperfect. We are one big happy family. If you are in a place where you're ready to pay it forward, so to speak, we're entering the next few days of a pretty difficult time. We know that. And if you're in a place, sometimes when you're mired down, it might help you to turn around and pull somebody else up. And so if you're in that place and you want to consider volunteering for us, Amaya gives us the best pitch every time we have an RfRx about what it's like to be a volunteer in the community. And she's absolutely right. All these folks that you see here, and some folks that you may not know, I guess everybody with a show of hands, if you're an RfR volunteer. Some folks that are here this evening are part of our family, and they'll all vouch for that. If you'd like to do that, we'd love to have you join. If you'd like to be instead, if you feel like you've got a buck or two to send our way, if that's something that would suit you better, we'd appreciate that too. We depend upon, we don't have a convention, and we don't have membership, and we don't have some of the revenue streams that some of the other nonprofits that you may have known about have. And so we're grateful for the shared passion of our donors for what we're trying to do and reaching forward to folks who need a little bit of support as they as they doubt and sometimes leave their religion. Thank you for coming. This is now entering into the fun part of the evening, the social hour. As you know, I always turn my camera off, but I always leave the microphone on, and I appreciate you letting me sort of get into my jammies and get comfy as you all visit with one another and share your stories. I'm so grateful that you're here tonight. Everybody have a wonderful evening. Take time to take care of yourself this week. Stay hydrated, get a little bit of exercise, take a deep breath, reach out to the people who care about you. Thank you, everyone.